there is one terrifying truth about from that most people completely miss. People think this story is about monsters that come out at night. It isn't. They think it's about escaping a cursed town. It isn't. They think the biggest mystery is who created the monsters. That's not the real mystery either. Because after everything we've seen across 4 seasons, the creatures aren't the ones controlling the game. Someone has been watching every single person from the very beginning. Someone knew Jim would build the radio before he ever touched it. Someone knew Tabitha would dig beneath the house. Someone whispered into Sarah's mind. Someone manipulated Abby, Henry, Elgin, and nearly every tragedy that has happened inside this town. And by the end of season 4, we finally realized something absolutely terrifying. The monsters were never the final enemy. They were only pieces on the board. For 4 seasons, the show has secretly been telling one giant story. Every strange vision, every mysterious child, every bottle hanging from the tree, every drawing Victor ever made, every voice, every symbol, every death, they all connect. The problem is that From never explains those connections in order. Instead, it hides answers inside moments that seem completely unrelated until years later. So today we're going to do something the show never does. We're going to take every major event from seasons 1 through 4, put them into one continuous story, and explain how every mystery leads to the next one. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the town exists, why the children keep saying remember, why Tabitha and Jade are far more important than anyone imagined, why the man in yellow changes absolutely everything, and why season 5 isn't about escaping anymore. It's about ending a game that may have been played for centuries. Let's start where every cycle always begins. A road, a fallen tree, and one family that had absolutely no idea they had already lost. Every mystery has a beginning. For From, that beginning looks incredibly simple. The Matthews family is driving toward Yellowstone, trying to hold together a marriage that is already falling apart. Jim and Tabitha are planning to divorce. Julie is frustrated. Ethan is still young enough to believe that adventures can fix everything. Then they reach a fallen tree blocking the road. At first glance, it feels like nothing more than bad luck. They turn around. They drive into a small town. And then they discover something impossible. Every road leads back to the same place. That single moment quietly tells us the most important rule in the entire series. Nobody finds this town by accident. The tree isn't simply blocking traffic. It's choosing who enters the game. When the Matthews family finally meets the residents, they discover that everyone arrived exactly the same way. Different years, different lives, different destinations, but always the same tree. Already, the town begins asking a question it refuses to answer. If everyone entered the same way, who put the tree there? Season 1 distracts us from that question by introducing something much scarier. Night. As soon as the sun disappears, smiling people emerge from the forest. They don't scream. They don't run. They don't behave like monsters. Instead, they knock politely. They speak softly. They smile warmly. They ask to come inside. That behavior makes them infinitely more frightening than ordinary horror creatures. Because they don't hunt with speed. They hunt with trust. The only thing protecting the residents are strange carved stones called talismans. Nobody understands how they work. Nobody knows who made them. Boyd simply found them deep in the forest. Think about how strange that really is. The town's entire survival depends on magical objects that nobody created and nobody understands. Season 1 barely acknowledges this. But looking back after season 4, that detail becomes incredibly important. If someone placed the talismans there, someone wanted humanity to survive, at least for a while. That immediately creates 2 opposing possibilities. Either the town wants people alive, or something else inside the town does. The monsters themselves behave strangely too. Normal predators kill quickly. These creatures don't. Sometimes they stand outside windows for hours. Sometimes they hold conversations. Sometimes they pretend to be loved ones. Sometimes they simply wait. Patience becomes one of their defining characteristics. Almost like they're following instructions instead of instincts. That feeling grows stronger when we meet Boyd Stevens. Boyd isn't just the sheriff. He's the reason the town still functions. Rules, schedules, curfews, food distribution, punishments. Everything depends on structure. Because Boyd understands something before anyone else. Chaos kills. The monsters don't need to break down every door. They only need one person to make one mistake. Season 1 proves that lesson over and over again. Frank Pratt drinks too much. His family leaves a window unsecured. One creature convinces his daughter to open it. By morning, his wife and daughter are dead. Kevin secretly falls in love with Jasmine. He believes she's different. One night, he opens the window. Within minutes, Colony House becomes a massacre. Notice the pattern. Neither tragedy happens because the monsters are stronger. They happen because they understand human emotion better than humans understand theirs. Love, loneliness, hope, regret. Those become weapons. Even Sarah's story follows the same design. She begins hearing voices. The voices promise that killing the newcomers will save everyone. They know impossible things. They know Boyd's military nickname. They know Father Cattry's secrets. They know events before they happen. At first, it feels like supernatural prophecy. But after everything revealed in Season 4, those voices look very different. Someone wasn't predicting events. Someone was creating them. That difference changes everything. Sarah becomes responsible for terrible acts. She kills Toby. She indirectly causes Kenny's father's death. She nearly murders Ethan. But the voices always remain just beyond reach. Invisible, manipulative, patient, exactly like the monsters. Looking back now, it's difficult to ignore the similarities. Season 4 confirms that the man in yellow was one of the forces speaking through Sarah. That means one of the biggest mysteries was secretly introduced almost immediately. The true enemy wasn't hiding in the forest. It was already hiding inside people's minds. Meanwhile, other characters begin discovering pieces of an even older mystery. Victor has lived here longer than anyone. His memories are broken. His drawings feel childish. But they're filled with details nobody else knows. Instead of giving answers, Victor gives fragments. Pictures, locations, small warnings. At first they seem meaningless. Eventually they become historical evidence. Jade arrives believing everything is an elaborate prank. That confidence disappears the moment strange symbols begin appearing around him. Nobody else can see them. Nobody can explain them. Still, the symbols continue leading him somewhere. At almost the same time, Tabitha begins digging beneath her house after discovering impossible electrical wires leading nowhere. That decision feels small, but it quietly starts one of the biggest storylines in the entire series. Because once someone starts digging, the town starts watching. The Season 1 finale proves exactly that. Jim builds a radio tower, hoping to contact the outside world. Against every expectation, someone answers. The voice doesn't ask who Jim is. It doesn't ask where he is. Instead, it calmly says something impossible. Your wife shouldn't be digging that hole. That single sentence changes everything we thought we knew. Someone can see them. Someone has been watching them. Someone knows everything happening inside the town. And if someone is watching, then this place isn't simply a prison. It's an experiment. Or perhaps, a game. And Season 2 begins by showing us just how old that game really is. If Season 1 teaches us the rules of survival, then Season 2 asks a much more disturbing question. Who was here before everyone else? The answer begins with Boyd. At the end of the first season, Boyd leaves town with Sarah, hoping that if they travel far enough into the forest, they might finally discover a way home. Instead, they discover something completely different. History. Deep in the woods, Boyd finds strange ruins that don't belong to the modern town. Hidden inside is a dungeon unlike anything we've seen before. And chained inside that dungeon is a man named Martin. Martin immediately changes the way we think about the town. He doesn't seem surprised to see Boyd. In fact, he talks to him almost like another soldier who understands exactly what he's been through. Then something impossible happens. Martin cuts Boyd. He presses their wounds together. And he says one sentence that becomes incredibly important later. My blood is your blood now. Immediately, Boyd notices strange worms moving beneath his skin. They're alive. They're real. And somehow, Martin has transferred them directly into Boyd. Before Boyd leaves, Martin begs him to kill him. Boyd does. But Martin's death isn't the important part. The important part is what Martin proves. Someone was imprisoned in this place long before Boyd ever arrived. The town isn't just trapping people today. It's been trapping people for generations. That single discovery changes everything. Because mysteries become much bigger once history enters the picture. At almost the same time, Tabitha's digging finally reaches its destination. Instead of finding electrical equipment or hidden tunnels built by modern people, she discovers an underground world. Dark tunnels stretch beneath the town like forgotten veins. And inside those tunnels are children's drawings. Think carefully about what that means. Children lived down here. Not visited. Lived. Someone built these tunnels. Someone filled them with children. And whatever happened to those children happened long before our current characters ever arrived. Then Tabitha sees them. Pale children. Silent children. Children wearing old-fashioned clothing. They don't attack. They don't threaten. Instead, they keep repeating one strange word. At first, the audience has absolutely no idea what they're saying. The word sounds mysterious, almost meaningless. But From Has Always Loved Planting answers years before explaining them. Season 3 will eventually reveal that the children have been saying one word all along. Remember. That revelation completely changes every one of these scenes. These children were never haunting Tabitha. They were trying to reach her. Meanwhile, Jade's own investigation is becoming even stranger. The mysterious symbol continues appearing everywhere he looks. The more he studies it, the more he learns about Christopher. Christopher lived in the town decades earlier. He saw the exact same symbol. He became obsessed with it. Eventually, he completely lost his mind. For everyone else, Christopher becomes a warning. For Jade, he becomes proof. If another person saw exactly what he's seeing, then Jade isn't imagining anything. Someone wants him to follow this trail. The question is why. Season 2 quietly introduces another terrifying idea. The town isn't satisfied with attacking people while they're awake anymore. Now it invades their dreams. People begin having nightmares that leave physical injuries after they wake up. Sleep itself becomes dangerous. Think about how clever that is. Doors can protect you. Windows can stay locked. Talismans can defend a house. But nobody can stop themselves from dreaming. For the first time, the town creates an attack that ignores every safety rule established during Season 1. Soon, Julie, Randall, and Marielle fall into mysterious comas connected to an eerie music box. Their bodies remain alive. Their minds become trapped somewhere nobody else can reach. Once again, Boyd refuses to accept defeat. Following every clue he can find, he tracks the music to its supernatural source. Then he does something almost nobody in the town ever attempts. He attacks the system itself. Boyd destroys the music box. Immediately, Julie, Randall, and Marielle return. That moment quietly establishes one of the biggest rules in the entire series. The supernatural forces controlling the town are not invincible. Their machinery can be damaged. Their plans can fail. That lesson becomes much more important in Seasons 3 and 4. Because eventually the townspeople stop trying to survive. They begin trying to fight back. Boyd unknowingly proves something else as well. The worms Martin gave him never disappear. Instead, they become a weapon. During a brutal confrontation, Boyd transfers the worms into Smiley, one of the most recognizable monsters in the series. For the first time, a creature dies. That scene shocked almost everyone because up until then the monsters appeared completely immortal. But notice exactly what the show tells us. It doesn't say every monster can now be killed. It only proves that under very specific supernatural conditions, one of them can die. The town immediately begins searching for ways to repeat the process. They collect bile from Smiley's body. They experiment. They even coat bullets with it. Nothing works. The victory cannot be recreated. Still, the illusion of complete immortality has been broken. There is a weakness somewhere. They simply haven't found it yet. While all this is happening, another storyline quietly builds toward one of the show's darkest mysteries. Fatima discovers she's pregnant. Under normal circumstances, this would be wonderful news. Except Fatima had been told for years she couldn't have children. Inside from, impossible pregnancies aren't comforting. They're terrifying. The town has already shown us that it changes people. Now it appears capable of creating life itself. Nobody understands what the pregnancy means. Nobody realizes what it will eventually become. The audience only feels growing dread. Because whenever this town gives someone a miracle, it usually demands something much worse in return. Season 2 ends with perhaps its biggest surprise. Victor tells Tabitha about a lighthouse deep in the forest. Guided by the mysterious boy in white, she finally reaches it. The climb feels almost spiritual. Every step forces her through disturbing visions. Every hallway seems connected to forgotten memories. Finally, she reaches the top. The boy in white is waiting. Without warning, he pushes her through the window. 1 second, she's inside the lighthouse. The next, she wakes up in a hospital bed, outside the town, back in the real world. For the first time since the series began, someone has escaped. Or at least, that's what it looks like. But even this victory feels strange. Tabitha didn't choose to leave. She was thrown out. Almost like someone else decided her journey outside wasn't over yet. That ending forces us to rethink everything. If escape is possible, why has almost nobody ever managed it? Who decides when someone leaves? And, perhaps most importantly, if people can leave, why do they always end up coming back? Season 2 gives us one final realization before moving on. Season 1 asked who built the prison. Season 2 reveals something even more frightening. The prison has been operating for centuries. Generations have entered. Generations have failed. And somewhere beneath the town, the truth has been waiting the entire time. Season 3 is where those buried secrets finally begin coming to the surface. Season 3 is where From stops being only a survival story and becomes something much bigger. For 2 seasons, the residents have been asking one question. How do we get out? But Season 3 slowly changes the question. Because maybe escaping was never the real goal. Maybe understanding the town was. The season begins with the town facing a new kind of threat. Not monsters. Not nightmares. Something much more basic. Food. The crops begin dying. Supplies start disappearing. The animals become harder to manage. For the first time, the residents aren't just fighting what comes from the forest. They're fighting the possibility of slowly starving. And then, at the exact moment they need help the most, the forest provides. Jim and Kenny discover fresh crops growing near an abandoned settlement. At first, it feels like a miracle, a gift, a sign that maybe the town is finally giving them something good. But by now, we understand the pattern. In this place, gifts are never free. The town doesn't simply give people what they need. It gives them exactly enough to survive. Because dead people cannot play the game. The residents must remain alive. They must continue searching. They must continue suffering. And that realization becomes even darker when the monsters target the town's animals. The creatures release the livestock at night, forcing Boyd, Kenny, Tian-Chen, and others into danger. But this attack isn't about food. The monsters already know they can kill people. This time, they want something else. They want to break Boyd. For years, Boyd has been the person everyone depends on. The leader, the protector, the man who always finds a solution. So the monsters attack the one thing they know he cannot replace. His hope. They captured Tian-Chen. And they make Boyd watch as she suffers. This moment reveals something important about the creatures. They were never simply hungry. They understand emotions. They understand pain. They understand exactly which person to hurt to create the biggest damage. Back in Season 1, the monsters smiled outside windows. In Season 3, they finally show what those smiles really mean. They aren't pretending to be human. They understand humanity better than humans understand them. Meanwhile, Boyd's personal battle becomes more difficult. Every decision starts carrying consequences. Every person he saves creates another problem. Every sacrifice creates another wound. The The man who always believed he could protect everyone begins realizing the terrible truth. In this town, nobody can save everyone. That is the pressure slowly destroying him. And while Boyd fights to hold the town together, Tabitha is facing a completely different battle. She is outside, the first person to truly leave. But freedom brings a new problem. Nobody believes her. To everyone outside, her story sounds impossible. A hidden town, night monsters, people trapped somewhere that doesn't exist. Her own family thinks she is dealing with trauma. But Tabitha knows the truth. The people she left behind are still trapped. So instead of moving on, she starts searching for answers. And that search leads her to an old man named Henry. At first, Henry seems unrelated, just another person from the outside world. But then the impossible connection appears. Henry is Victor's father, the same Victor who has spent decades trapped inside the town. The same Victor who arrived as a child and lost everyone he loved. This reveal completely changes Victor's story. For years, everyone saw him as strange, broken, a man frozen in childhood. But now we understand something. Victor isn't strange because he doesn't understand the town. Victor is strange because he understands it better than anyone. He survived something nobody else survived. And he carried those memories alone. When Tabitha brings Henry back to the town, the story creates one of its most emotional reunions. A father finally reaches the son he thought was gone forever. But this is from Nothing Good Arrives Without a Cost. The town gave Henry his son back, but it also brought him into the same nightmare that stole Victor's childhood. And while Henry enters Victor's world, another impossible mystery is growing. Fatima's pregnancy. At first, everyone believes it is a miracle. But slowly, something feels wrong. The pregnancy isn't normal. Fatima starts experiencing strange cravings. She wants things that no human should want. She becomes attracted to spoiled food, rotten things, things connected to death. The same town that creates impossible life is now changing that life into something terrifying. Then tragedy strikes. Tilly discovers Fatima eating rotten food. Instead of judging her, Tilly tries to help. She approaches her with kindness. But something inside Fatima reacts. She attacks. She kills Tilly. The important part is that Fatima doesn't feel like herself. It isn't a simple choice. It feels like something else is moving through her. And once again, the town creates a victim and a monster at the same time. Meanwhile, another person begins receiving messages. Elgin. Like Sarah before him, Elgin hears and sees things others cannot. A mysterious woman in a kimono appears to him. She guides him. She warns him. She influences his decisions. And slowly, Elgin becomes convinced that Fatima's baby is important, that it can save everyone. But this is exactly how the town works. It doesn't always force people. It convinces them. It takes their fears, their hopes, their love, and turns those emotions into weapons. That is what happened with Sarah. That is what happened with Abby. And now it is happening again. The town doesn't need to control every person. It only needs one person to believe the wrong thing. But the biggest revelation of Season 3 doesn't come from Fatima. It comes from the bottle tree, the place where so many mysteries have been pointing. For years, Jade has been chasing symbols. Tabitha has been seeing visions. Victor has been remembering fragments. Now those separate paths finally connect. The numbers written inside the bottles aren't random. They aren't a code. They're music. Jade realizes that the tree is connected to a melody. And when he plays that melody using Miranda's violin, something impossible happens. The children appear. The same children Tabitha saw underground. The same children who have been trying to communicate. And finally, Tabitha understands their message. The word they kept repeating. The word that seemed meaningless. Anghkooey. It means remember. That single word changes the entire story. The children weren't monsters. They weren't ghosts trying to scare people. They were trapped. They were waiting. They needed someone to remember what happened to them. And then the biggest truth is revealed. Tabitha and Jade are not experiencing these visions for the first time. They have been here before, many times, across different lives. Different names, different eras, but the same mission, to save the children, to finish what they started. The town isn't just a prison, it's a cycle, a repeating story where the same people return again and again, trying to complete a rescue they failed to finish. And the reason they failed becomes the darkest discovery of all. The original people in this town made a deal. They sacrificed their own children. They traded their children's lives for immortality. And the monsters? The smiling creatures that hunt every night? They are connected to that original sin. They are the people who accepted that bargain. They got exactly what they wanted. They stopped aging. But they became something worse. They became prisoners of their own choice. This revelation changes every night attack. The monsters aren't just killing strangers. They are connected to the beginning of everything. They are the result of the first terrible decision made in this place. But Season 3 still has one final mystery to reveal. Julie. For a long time, Julie feels something pulling her toward the ruins where Boyd found Martin. Eventually, she discovers something impossible. She can move through time, not physically, but her consciousness can enter moments from the past. She becomes what the show calls a story walker. But there is a rule. She cannot change what has already happened. At least, that is what everyone believes. Because the past in from may not be as fixed as it appears. And that question becomes terrifying when Season 3 reaches its final moments. Because Jim is about to discover the truth. The radio voice. The man who has been watching. The force behind so many mysteries. He finally appears. A man in a yellow suit. And he tells Jim something that connects the entire series. Knowledge has a cost. Then he kills him. At the same time, an older version of Julie appears, desperately trying to save her father. But she can't. She is trapped watching history happen. And that moment reveals the true danger of the town. You can discover the truth. You can understand the rules. You can even travel through time. But that doesn't mean you can change the story. Season 3 ends with one terrifying message. The town remembers everything. And now, something inside the town remembers them too. For 3 seasons, the people of Framville believed they were fighting a monster problem. They thought the creatures in the forest were the biggest threat. They thought the goal was simple. Survive the night. Find a way out. Stay alive long enough to escape. But Season 4 changes everything. Because the residents finally discover the truth that has been hiding behind every mystery. The monsters were never the whole story. They were only one part of something much older. Something smarter. Something that has been watching them since the beginning. Season 4 begins with another arrival. A woman named Sophia enters the town just like everyone else. Confused, afraid, trying to understand who she is. The residents do what they always do. They explain the rules. They explain the monsters. They explain the talismans. They bring her into their world. But slowly, something begins to feel wrong. Because Sophia isn't acting like a normal newcomer. She knows things she shouldn't know. She appears at exactly the right moments. She understands people too quickly. And then the truth is finally revealed. Sophia is not who everyone thinks she is. The entity connected to the man in yellow has taken her appearance. It is wearing her face. And this becomes one of the most important discoveries in the entire series. The enemy is no longer hiding outside the town. It can walk among them. It can speak with them. It can earn their trust. For years, the residents believed danger had one appearance. A smiling creature standing outside a window. But Season 4 reveals something much worse. The most dangerous enemy is the one that can look human. The one that can sit beside you. The one that can comfort you after killing someone you loved. Because that is exactly what happens. The entity walks through the town wearing a borrowed face. It watches funerals. It listens to plans. It learns their weaknesses. It doesn't need to attack from the shadows anymore. It can stand in the middle of everyone and still remain invisible. And that changes the entire game. Because survival becomes much harder when you don't know who is real. Meanwhile, Julie continues trying to understand her strange ability. For the first time, she begins treating her power like a mystery that can be studied. She doesn't simply fear it. She experiments with it. She leaves messages. She creates marks. She tries to understand if the past can somehow be influenced. But every attempt leads to the same painful discovery. The past is not a place she controls. It is a story already written. She can visit. She can witness. She can experience. But changing it appears impossible. That becomes especially painful when she returns to one of the darkest moments in Victor's childhood. The night everything changed. The night almost everyone in the town died. And there she sees something terrifying. The man in yellow, not as a rumor, not as a symbol, but as something real, something powerful, something that even appears surprised when he sees her. And that reaction is important. Because for the first time, the enemy shows weakness. The entity that always seems to know everything doesn't know everything. It didn't expect Julie to be there. It didn't expect someone to see that moment. And that small reaction reveals something huge. The enemy has power, but it is not all-powerful. It has limits. The residents finally have something they never had before, a possibility, a weakness. While Julie searches through the past, Victor discovers another painful truth. For decades, everyone around Victor treated his memories like trauma. They believed he was confused. They believed his childhood memories were distorted. But Season 4 proves something different. Victor was right. The things he remembered actually happened. The nightmares he carried were memories. The drawings he created were not random. They were evidence. The town didn't break Victor's mind. The town forced him to carry the truth alone. And when he discovers proof connected to the man in yellow, it destroys the comforting idea that maybe he imagined everything. Victor spent his entire life being told to forget. But remembering was the one thing that kept him alive. And that connects directly to the children. The word they repeated, remember. Because the town's greatest weapon has always been forgetting. Every cycle begins with people who don't understand what happened before. Every generation arrives without knowledge. Every attempt fails because the players forget the previous game. But Tabitha and Jade are different. They're starting to remember. And that makes them dangerous. Meanwhile, Sarah's story comes full circle. The voices return. The same voices that controlled her in Season 1. The same voices that pushed her toward terrible choices. For years, Sarah believed something was wrong with her. She believed she was cursed. But Season 4 reveals the truth. Someone was using her. The voices were not random. They were part of the same force connected to the man in yellow. Sarah wasn't simply a person who heard strange things. She was a weapon. A person manipulated into doing exactly what the entity wanted. And that revelation changes how we see her entire journey. She was never just a villain. She was one of the earliest victims of the town's psychological warfare. The same pattern appears again with Henry. Victor's father arrives carrying decades of pain. He finally reunites with his son. But the entity sees something in Henry. A weakness. A wound. A person who has spent years believing he lost his child forever. The entity begins attacking his mind. It feeds him visions. It creates doubt. It makes him question reality itself. And then it uses the same idea that destroyed Abby Stevens. The idea that death can be an escape. Henry begins believing that this entire world is a dream. That the only way to wake up is to break the illusion. And the entity pushes him toward the same terrifying conclusion. Kill the person you love. It is the same method. Different person. Different time. Same result. That is when the residents finally understand something. The entity doesn't just kill bodies. It attacks beliefs. It attacks hope. It attacks the things that make people human. While all these personal battles happen, the biggest mystery finally moves forward. Jade's investigation reaches deeper into the town's origin. Following visions and symbols, he discovers that the answer isn't somewhere outside. It is beneath them. The truth has been buried underground. When Boyd finally decides to trust Jade's instincts, he breaks through a hidden area beneath Colony House. And there they find something that changes everything. A chamber. Bones. The remains of the children. The children who have been trying to communicate for years. The children who kept saying remember. The children whose story was never finished. For the first time, the residents understand their true mission. They are not just prisoners trying to escape. They are people trapped inside an unfinished story. A story that began with a terrible sacrifice. The original people of the town made a bargain. They sacrificed children in exchange for immortality. And that bargain created everything. The creatures, the cycle, the suffering, the endless repetition. The monsters were not created to punish the town. They are the ones who benefited from the deal. They got what they wanted, eternal life. But they lost everything that made them human. Now Tabitha and Jade finally understand their role. They have returned again and again throughout history. Different lives, different names, same purpose, to save the children, to break the cycle. And this time, something is different. Because they have reached a point they never reached before. They found the bones. They found the truth. They are closer than they have ever been. And the entity knows it. That is why Season 4 becomes the first time the enemy starts acting afraid. Not angry, not confident. Afraid. Because for centuries,